Breaking news into CBS Sports HQ, a blockbuster trade in the NFL. The Raiders trading Maxx Crosby to the Ravens for 2026 and 2027 first-round picks. That's according to ESPN. The Ravens only had 30 sacks this past season. Only the Jets and Niners had fewer. Meanwhile, the Raiders continue on their rebuild, adding the 14th pick in this year's draft and Baltimore's first-rounder next year. We now welcome in CBS Sports NFL analyst and 10-year NFL defensive lineman, Douzable. We had a feeling, we knew this day was coming. The Raiders finally move on from the franchise pass rusher, and now the Ravens can reap the rewards. Yeah. What was your reaction to this blockbuster trade?
So to your point, Claudia, we knew there could be a potential for Maxx Crosby to be traded. Ultimately surprised us the Baltimore Ravens, because when you just look at their history, they usually trade players away for first-round picks. Orlando Brown was the left tackle for them. They traded him to the Kansas City Chiefs. Hollywood Brown, they traded him away to the Arizona Cardinals, right? Those are both draft picks. The Ravens are synonymous with building it within the draft and then letting players walk to get compensatory picks. So this is one of the few years they're being aggressive to get a guy like Maxx Crosby. So ultimately surprised. But I love the move, Claudia, because it's all about maximizing the time you have with Lamar Jackson. The one area that the Ravens really struggled on defense, now they had some other areas they struggled, but really struggled was getting after the quarterback. They traded away Odafe Oweh to the Chargers. Well, Jesse Minter, who's now the head coach, when he got there, he ended up getting 7.5 sacks for the rest of the season and then 3 sacks in the wild card round. So you see it most seasons with 10+ sacks. In Raiders history, Maxx Crosby's second on that list when it comes to the Raiders. And you see right there what Chargers defensive coordinator, now head coach Jesse Minter, did once he changed things around for the Chargers. He's a guy that's going to constantly have his defense playing at a high level. We saw Odafe Oweh have a lot of success. Tuli Tuipulotu have a lot of success with the Chargers. Now he gets Mad Maxx Crosby. This is a great move for the Baltimore Ravens because, again, it's all about maximizing your time with Lamar Jackson.
And like you said, Lige, maybe it's surprising that they're making this move, but I think they realized you have to make changes because they've had so much talent on this roster. And like you said, you're only going to have that star quarterback for so long. But we're talking defense here. We just saw the stats earlier. They were bottom 5 in sacks, only 2 teams worse, 2 of the worst teams in the league. What does adding a superstar like Maxx Crosby do to this defense?
Claudia, to put it in perspective, since the 2019 season, there's not a player in the NFL that has more quarterback pressures than Maxx Crosby. So from day one, he's going to affect the quarterback. And then you draft a guy like Mike Green in the second round. Who better to learn from than Mad Maxx Crosby? When you turn on the tape, Claudia, there isn't a player on the tape that plays harder than Mad Maxx Crosby. He doesn't take any plays off. As a matter of fact, Claudia, he doesn't come off the field and still plays with elite effort. He's going to fit perfectly with this Jesse Minter defense, and he's going to bring everybody around him. Everybody else is going to have to elevate their game to Mad Maxx Crosby. The interesting thing as a player, man, you get tired of losing, right? And he was a Raider through and through. It's going to be weird to see him in a different jersey, but now that he is a Raven, that fits his mantra. We always are associating the Ravens with being this physical, gritty, tough team. Well, that's Mad Maxx Crosby to a T. That's what he does. And you see the ranks right there since 2019, 6th in the NFL in sacks, 1st in tackles for loss. He's a guy that not only gets after the passer, Claudia, but he's elite in run defense as well. And you see it, defensive snaps. This guy doesn't come off the field. He's first among defensive linemen, and that's what I said earlier. He doesn't come off the field. He's a high-effort guy, and he's going to elevate everybody's game around him.
Yeah, and it's funny because during the Combine, Raiders GM John Spytek said keeping Crosby is a no-brainer. We want him for the future, and the Ravens probably sat back and said, yeah, it is a no-brainer. Why aren't we going out there and getting the guy that could be the difference on this defense? Let's talk about the Baltimore Ravens. Where does this put them when we're looking at the big picture of the AFC playoff race?
I mean, anytime you have a 2-time MVP and Lamar Jackson, you're talked about in that realm of being a Super Bowl contender. This pushes them up to that forefront, right? This was a team last year. There were ebbs and flows to the season. Lamar Jackson missed a few games. But if their kicker makes a field goal, they're hosting a playoff game in the first round of the wild card last year. And maybe they win that game at home, they could potentially go on a run. This is a team that still has Derrick Henry in the backfield, right? They still have talent up and down the roster. So when you add a guy like Maxx Crosby, who's a Defensive Player of the Year category candidate, this puts you at the forefront of Super Bowl contenders. So if you're the Ravens, like, that's the ultimate goal. They've been to the AFC Championship game. They have not been able to get over the hump and get into the Super Bowl with Lamar Jackson. Now with Maxx Crosby, a guy on defense that, again, is going to elevate everybody else's game on that side of the ball, this puts them at the forefront for Super Bowl contenders in the AFC.
Especially, Jay, when you look at that division with the AFC North, there's so many question marks for the other teams, and the Ravens just answered a very big question for themselves on defense. Let's move to the Raiders side of things. They already have the first overall pick. They now add the 14th overall pick to help the rebuilding process. Where do the Raiders go from here?
Yeah, they had so many deficiencies when it comes to talent on this roster, and you heard Mr. Spytek talk about potentially not letting Maxx Crosby go. But when somebody offers you 2 firsts and you know you have a bevy of roles to fill, you have to take that into consideration. And that's what he did. To me, this ultimately means Fernando Mendoza is going to be the face of the franchise, because that's what Maxx Crosby was for the Raiders. So this pushes them forward right now. Everything is going to be about Fernando Mendoza going #1 overall. But now they have the draft ammunition to potentially fill in some more holes, because when you look at that defense last year, it was Maxx Crosby, and then everybody else, there was question marks about on that defense. So there were so many holes in that defense. They had a lot of young players that played. You would hope, Claudia, going into their second year, even though it's going to be a new defense, that they would take a step in production and also development as well. But now with the draft ammunition and the draft capital they have, they can make some moves to really fill out this roster.
Free agency hasn't even started yet. We have all of this madness, Lige. Appreciate you. And here's a tweet. I mean, I just love social media, because you don't need words anymore. All you need is a little GIF and a little emoji, and there you have it. Lamar Jackson certainly happy that he's getting another star player on his roster. On the other side, you know, we just started. We are not finished here. More reaction on this massive blockbuster trade. With that, we welcome in CBS Sports NFL analyst Ryan Wilson. Ryan, this move shakes up the NFL landscape just days before free agency even begins. What was your initial reaction to this big news?
This is planned, right? Like, we understood that Maxx Crosby was not going to be in Las Vegas unless something crazy happened, no matter what John Spytek had said about wanting to keep him. John Spytek also told us, in talking about the first overall pick, he would answer the phone no matter who called. So clearly he answered the phone from Eric DeCosta, and they got a deal done. This is great news for the Ravens, and we heard Lige talk about that in the previous segment. They had to improve off the edge, and they got the most active, high-energy, hair-on-fire edge rusher in the NFL on Maxx Crosby. And this is potentially even better news for the Raiders, and it sounds silly to say in the wake of losing your best player, but they are making a youth movement. They are moving on from the older players, and Max was the reason probably they won 3 games last year. Otherwise, they may have won fewer than that, going all the way down to 0. But now they have the ability to stockpile draft picks, build around Fernando Mendoza, and turn this thing around. And then the question becomes, Claudia, is this going to be like a Houston Texans 2023 situation in which you can do it quickly if you get a couple of the picks right, including the franchise quarterback, in which case maybe there's another team in the AFC West that's going to challenge the suddenly vulnerable Kansas City Chiefs?
Like you said, we knew this was coming. We didn't know who would be on the receiving end of Maxx Crosby. When you think about the fit and think about the Ravens really restarting with a new head coach, the new pieces, the new era, we'll call it, for the Ravens, how important was this move to that?
Yeah, because the Bears were a popular landing spot. The Ravens weren't on my radar, and this is a grand slam. And Jesse Minter got the most out of Odafe Oweh when they traded for him to the Chargers last year at the trade deadline. He had 0 sacks previously last season for Baltimore and shows up in L.A., and he turns into a completely different player. And while Odafe Oweh is a good edge rusher, Maxx Crosby is one of one, and Jesse Minter's job just got a lot easier. He has his Derwin James and Kyle Hamilton, and now he has Maxx Crosby, and suddenly this defense is going to go a long way in taking the pressure off the offense, which at times was not hitting on all cylinders last year, and the defense was not helping out Lamar Jackson when he was banged up and that offense wasn't working. So this is a huge coup for Baltimore. I think the price is fair for both sides. 2 first-round picks feels about right, maybe even like a slight win for Baltimore. But again, you get now an extra first-rounder, which is 14 overall in the same draft where you have the first overall pick, and then you get next year's first-round pick, and you have a high pick in every other round this year because you weren't very good. I'm telling you, the Raiders can turn this thing around if they can get the owner and perhaps even Tom Brady out of the way from making some rash decisions.
Okay, but can they, is my question. Like, is that just a big hypothetical? What is the realistic timeline for the Raiders really getting these pieces together? Or, should expectations really go out the window and say you're getting rid of the pieces to get the money, to get the capital? What's the realistic timeline, Ryan? Like
2 years ago, Claudia, I'd be like, this is a 3 or 4 year process. But I mentioned the 2023 Texans, and they were a terrible football team going into that draft. Right. Got C.J. Stroud, traded for Will Anderson Jr., and then all they've done is gone to made 3 straight playoff appearances, winning 10 games at least in each of those seasons. Now, C.J. has regressed a little bit, maybe because of injury, maybe for something else, but that year 1 was electric. 2024 for the Washington Commanders. They got Jaden Daniels right. Now, they had changed owners and got a new head coach and a new GM, so there's some change there. But we saw Drake May hit on all cylinders this year. You know that quite well. They got a new coach in there. So they've changed coaches. The owner ain't going anywhere. As our buddy Rand Carthon likes to say, the owner isn't going to fire himself. But they have a new coach in there. He's an offensive-minded coach. John Spytek is a good GM. I think you need a little more hands-off from owners not named Mark Davis, Tom Brady, and you can make it happen. We've seen it happen in recent years, and it's happened quickly because you get the quarterback right, and then you get the infrastructure around that quarterback right. So it's doable, but it requires some restraint from people who have otherwise struggled to show restraint in key moments. And again, I'm talking to Mark Davis.
I'm sure he hears you. I'm very excited to see the next Ryan Wilson mock draft. Of course, you do the draft podcast. You've been talking about the draft all season long, all off season long. But the Raiders now are going to be even hotter of a topic than they were before with that extra first round pick. Names. Give me names. Who should we be keeping an eye out for in Las Vegas?
Yeah, scribbling a bunch of names while you're talking to Lige. Fernando Mendoza's pick number 1. If that doesn't happen, then you just fire everybody, and I recant everything that I just said about the quick turnaround. Then at pick 14, you can go in any number of directions, and the first name I wrote down, Claudia, was Venga Ioane, the left guard out of Penn State. They need desperately to fix this offensive line. They have Jackson Powers Johnson, who can play center and guard as well. They drafted him a few years ago. But if you solidify the offensive line for your young quarterback, that goes a long way. You can also solidify the defensive line. Caleb Banks out of Florida would be a fantastic choice here if he checks all the boxes health-wise. He went to the Senior Bowl and was absolutely dominant, and he can take over football games. That's also something they need. They also need an edge rusher because they just traded the best player on the team, Akeem Mesidor at 14. The other guy that plays opposite Reuben Bain Jr. should be available there. Maybe even TJ Parker if you trade down a few spots. There are any number of directions that you can go and get a marquee player because this draft is deep at every position virtually other than quarterback, and you're going to get the best quarterback. And I'll mention one other name. You can take a wide receiver there. And if Mekhi Lemon is there out of USC, that would also be a fantastic choice. Then they pick again at 36, and then I think maybe 30 picks later, so 50-something. So they're going to have a lot of a lot of bites of the apple to get this thing right. But pick 1, layup. Pick 14, you can't mess up pick 14 either, for being honest about it. And then after that, we'll see what happens. But I'm pretty excited about this Raiders draft all of a sudden because we knew it'd been Mendoza for what feels like months now, and now we can talk about what pick 14 can do for this team in terms of that quick turnaround that I'm trying to wish into existence.
Mendoza and Lemon, I mean, maybe they will be something this year if they do that, Ryan Wilson. Thank you. And you just heard Ryan's brain moving and grooving. He's doing math. He's thinking of the picks. It's because he does this every week with the First Pick podcast. You can watch it now. They do it all season, all off season long, all draft talk. Scan that QR code to check it out.